Hey again to everyone and welcome to part 2 of the personal slice video. In this particular video, I am going to briefly show you how to cut your animal in half again and then how to place the fruit into the middle. We are all going to have different animals, different backgrounds, and different fruit slices, so no two projects should look the same. So I'm going to just go ahead and start. I'm going to zoom into my bird. And I'm going to use my ellipse tool, which is the second tool in the menu. The angle that my bird is at right now isn't really ideal for me to use this ellipse tool because if I try to, it's gonna cut into its leg. So what I want to do instead is rotate my parrot. So I'm going to go to my parrot layer and then I'm going to go to Edit, Free Transform. And I'm going to click and drag outside of this rectangle. Notice that when you are outside of it, you'll see this little curved arrow. I'm just going to rotate it briefly to about this angle because I want to cut it right here. And then I will press the check mark. And now I will use my elliptical marquee tool or ellipse select tool and just click and drag the circle that I want. I think I'll move it a little bit as well. So that's a pretty good cut, I think. The next thing I want to do is use my lasso tool, and I'll hold shift and click and drag the entire right side of the bird, like so. And then I'm just going to click on the raster mask icon at the very bottom of my layer panel to add a raster mask to it. Then, just like I did with the cow, I'm going to duplicate this layer. Another way to duplicate is instead of just right-clicking on the layer and going to duplicate layer, you can also just make sure you're clicked on the layer and then go to layer on top and duplicate from there. Now that I've duplicated it, I'm going to go ahead and rename my layers just so I don't get confused later. This bottom one is going to be the top of my parrot, so I'm not going to call it right because I'm going to rotate it back later. So I'm going to go ahead and just call this one parrot top, and this one will be called parrot bottom. Then, just like I did before, I will click on this raster mask, this little icon, go to Image, Adjustments, and invert it. So now I have both sides of my parrot. They are all good to go. I just need to rotate this parrot back to its upper side so it makes sense on the background. To do this, I'm going to transform two layers at the same time. So I already have this layer clicked. I'm going to hold shift and click this bottom layer as well so they are both selected. And now I'm going to go to Edit and Free Transform again. I will go ahead and zoom out so I can see this more easily. And notice that the bounding box is now on the very outside of my background. That's because we added raster masks to this and it expanded the image to the whole canvas, which is totally fine. We just need to zoom out a little bit and then rotate it like this. And then I'll just click and drag it to move it up a bit, right about there. And then, just like before, when you are ready, click the check mark. I'll now zoom back in and go to my move tool. Before I remove the top part of the head, I do need to deselect one of these layers. So I'm just going to click on background, and then I can now use my move tool and just click and drag the head up like this. I know this seems really creepy. It is really creepy. So now that I have the top of the head moved the way I want it to, I'm going to zoom back out. And I'm going to take this kiwi image. I'm going to go to Edit, Free Transform to change the size of it. And I'm going to just click and drag it to make it much smaller and move it. Then I will zoom in. I think I am going to go ahead and rotate it, so I'll just hover right outside of this bounding box and I will click and drag it to rotate it. And then I'll just continue making it smaller. And I just need to eyeball how small I need to make it and how it needs to fit into this little area. So I'll rotate it a little bit more, make it a bit smaller and narrower. And then I will just place it. I think that's a good spot and it looks semi-realistic. And once I'm happy with it, I will just click on my check mark. If you notice anything like this happening to you, you guys can see this really thin white outline on the kiwi. An easy way to fix this is just to click on the raster thumbnail for the kiwi, go to the eraser tool. I didn't mention this in the last video, I completely forgot, but when you are erasing and you're on a raster mask, you always need to make sure that the very bottom color is set to black. This is foreground color and this is called background color. So we just need to make sure this is set to black. If it isn't already, all you have to do is click it and just click and drag it to either the bottom right or the bottom left and press OK. So I'm ready to erase. I'm just going to zoom in and I will make my brush smaller. And you can just very easily and quickly erase this white outer edge from the kiwi, which is super annoying. Like so. I can now zoom back out. And maybe I want to place this top head in a way that it looks like it's like layered on top of this kiwi. So I'll just go to my move tool and move this top part of the head. It is not in the position it should be. The parrot top layer should be at the very top. So I'm going to click and drag it and then move it where I want it to be. Very conveniently, this image of my parrot already had a shadow attached to it, so it looks even more realistic. But if yours did not have a shadow attached to it, all you have to do is make a new layer. Click and drag it right over the background layer. And just do exactly what we did with our lemon cow. Take your brush tool, make sure it is set to black, and then make sure that your hardness on the brush is set to 0 by clicking this little drop down menu and just clicking and dragging the hardness all the way down. We do also want to make sure that the opacity is nice and low, so I'll change this number from 100 to 15. So now I can make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'm just pretending my parrot doesn't have shadows on it already, just for those of you guys whose animals don't come with it. And you can just start clicking and dragging. Make sure you're on that new layer you made and just click and drag this really subtle shadow under your animal. This looks decent. The last thing I'm going to do is set my layer blend mode from normal to soft light. So you can see if you press on this little eyeball that it does just give this really subtle shadow and it blends in with the color on the background layer that the animal is sitting on. So if this is still too dark, you can always just manually go in with your brush and darken it up a little bit as you prefer. It won't make too big of a difference, but it'll definitely be making a difference. So I want it to just be nice and subtle like that. I'm gonna go ahead and just zoom out. This looks pretty good, I think. I like the lighting and everything going on. The last thing I need to do is just rename this layer to shadow. And that is pretty much it for this project. There is no part 3, which is not something we're used to. I just want to remind you guys to make sure that you are saving in between every layer that you make to make sure that you're not going to lose any of your progress if some freak accident happens. But once you're at this point, go ahead and just make sure that you have renamed your project to last name, first name, personal slice. Go to File, Save as PSD, and you are officially done. I'll see you guys on the next project.